Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome again to the Stoner Report. I'm Marius Stoner, Associate Editor of Cannabis Culture Magazine. I'm here at 307 West Hastings, giving you another weekly edition of the news in relation to marijuana. It's kind of a beautiful day here in Vancouver today. A little bit of clouds, so it's not terribly hot all the time, but yeah, we've been having a pretty good summer this last week. Yeah, we're pretty happy with that. We're still not sure when Mark is going to get back home. We're thinking either 2 weeks to 4 weeks is our best estimate. So, yeah, we're still looking forward to that. And, we'll keep you updated if we get any more news. He's still in Louisiana right now, and he's having some problems with fleas. Everybody there is getting tons of flea bites, so hopefully the paperwork will go fast and he'll get back here soon. Yeah, we're really looking forward to it, and yeah, finally it's going to happen soon. All right, so let's start with the week's news. Clearing the air on medical marijuana in the workplace. This is a Canadian story. Employers will ignore Mary Jane at their own peril in wake of recent changes to Canada's medical marijuana system, says one employment lawyer. Companies should be prepared to accommodate a growing number of workers on weed after the federal government brought in its new regime, known as the Marijuana for Medical Purposes Regulations, or MMPR. Under new guidelines, patient must obtain a prescription for marijuana that they can bring to a federally licensed grower. Employers have to understand their legal obligations when facing an employee with a pot prescription, according to employment lawyer David Whitten, including the fact that they must find a way to accommodate the employee's need to use the drug in the workplace. Currently, an estimated 40,000 Canadians treat various conditions with pot. But Health Canada estimates that nearly 500,000 Canadians will be using medical marijuana within 10 years. Employers are going to ignore Mary Jane at their own peril, Whitten told ctvnews.ca in a phone interview. She's coming to the dance whether they like it or not. So, what are the most pressing issues that both medicinal marijuana users and their employers should know about? Here are Whitten's top pieces of advice. And, of course, you have to read that at the actual site itself because we're not allowed to do more than snippets. So, and also in Canada, doctors ignore science and go all reefer madness. An hour before close on the Canadian markets, and there's not one news release out from a medical marijuana company we're tracking today. For a Monday, when companies like to throw good news out to start the week, this is an odd thing. But the medical marijuana industry is in wait and see mode right now, which pretty much everyone waiting for Health Canada to approve another MMPR or two, while investors count down the days until companies like Bedrocan, Organigram, Aferia, and the like debuted on the markets. Added to the weirdness, the Canadian Medical Association, otherwise known as aging doctors looking for a nice quiet place to pad out their remaining years, came out and broke with no tradition at all over the weekend by taking the stance that cannabis is harmful to you and we should all be scared of it. In an article headlined Medical Marijuana Producers Attempting to Woo Doctors, the Sawbones Brigade made a point of deriding the marijuana industry for sending out lots of sales guys in shiny suits to persuade doctors to use cannabis treatments, something the creaking leather armchair dwellers consider abhorrent. Funny thing, they don't seem to have a problem with OxyContin salesmen and Ritalin hawkers taking doctors on golfing holidays in return for referrals. But that's good drugs, while CBD treatments that help toddlers stop chronic seizures will make you rape donkeys and be mean to your parents and spend Saturday nights drag racing hot rods on the freeways. All hepped up on goofballs, apparently. The doctors, and I use the term loosely, as they have a history of putting out angry white man press releases denigrating grown-up pursuits without actually checking the science first, see their drive to ban mixed martial arts several years ago because it looks rough on TV, were represented by CMA President Dr. Louis Hugo Francescuti, who was quoted as saying he is actually quite frightened because the weedcos are operating in the same way as pharmaceutical companies do. Yes, and I read that story last week, but Dr. Francescuto is quite the quack, since he has done absolutely no research on marijuana and doesn't seem to know what the heck he's talking about. The Canadian political debate over marijuana legalization heats up. The political debate over marijuana legalization in Canada could soon intensify, following a New York Times editorial that calls for the U.S. federal government to repeal its 44-year-old ban on pot. The influential newspaper, which says the question of legalization should be left up to individual U.S. states, is running a 6-day series on the issue and has reignited a hot debate among Americans. It concluded that the ban has inflicted great harm on society just to prohibit a substance far less dangerous than alcohol. The editorial comes as some U.S. states reform pot laws. Marijuana for recreational use went on sale in Colorado January 1st, and Washington followed suit this month. Oregon and Alaska will vote on the matter in November. Nonetheless, because a federal ban on the drug is still on the books, those states that legalize it do so in direct contravention with federal law. Here in Canada, Liberal leader Justin Trudeau favors a system of legalization that regulates the sale of pot and keeps it out of the hands of minors. The Liberals argue that it's a smarter way of dealing with the issue because it would take away the pot market from organized crime and gangs, while also ensuring a better system of addressing the effects of marijuana use on individual health and communities. According to an independent think tank, marijuana legalization in Colorado is a success. The Brookings Institute said Colorado's system addresses key concerns. The Brookings Institute released a report today confirming what many Americans already suspected. The rollout of legal marijuana in Colorado is a success. The independent think tank concluded that the state's regulatory system for marijuana properly addresses key concerns such as diversion, shirking, communication breakdowns, illegal activity, and the financial challenges facing the marijuana industry. The report, titled Colorado's Rollout of Legal Marijuana is Succeeding, states that good communication and leadership have contributed to the success. The report makes it clear that it is an assessment of the government, not a commentary on whether the legalization of retail marijuana was the correct decision. Instead, it takes for granted that Amendment 64 and its progeny are the law, and it should be implemented successfully per voters' wishes. The report attributes the positive results of the experiment to cultural changes amongst the public, the government, and interest groups. It contrasts Colorado's successful implementation of the new law with the federal government's recent shortcomings in implementing new laws in recent months. And here's the beginning of the New York Times editorial on marijuana that came out starting last week. It took 13 years for the United States to come to its senses and end prohibition. 13 years in which people kept drinking, otherwise law-abiding citizens became criminals, and crime syndicates arose and flourished. It has been more than 40 years since Congress passed the current ban on marijuana, inflicting great harm on society just to prohibit a substance far less dangerous than alcohol. The federal government should repeal the ban on marijuana. We reached that conclusion after a great deal of discussion amongst the members of the Times editorial board, inspired by a rapidly growing movement among the states to reform marijuana laws. When there are no perfect answers to people's legitimate concerns about marijuana use, but neither are there such answers about tobacco and alcohol, and we believe that on every level, health effects, the impact on society, and law and order issues, the balance falls squarely on the side of national legalization. That will put decisions on whether to allow recreational or medicinal production and use it where it belongs, at the state level. We considered whether it would be best for Washington to hold back while the states continued experimenting with legalizing medicinal uses of marijuana, reducing penalties, or even simply legalizing all use. Nearly 3/4 of the states have done one of these. But that would leave their citizens vulnerable to the whims of whoever happens to be in the White House and chooses to enforce or not enforce the federal law. And now the required White House response on marijuana. When the White House issued a statement last night saying that marijuana would remain illegal, or should remain illegal, responding to our pro-legalization editorial series, officials there weren't just expressing an opinion. They were following the law. The White House Office of National Drug Control Policy is required by statute to oppose all efforts to legalize any banned drug. It's one of the most anti-scientific, know-nothing provisions in any federal law, but it remains an active imposition on every White House. The drug czar, as the director of the Drug Control Policy Office is informally known, must take such actions as necessary to oppose any attempt to legalize the use of a substance that's listed on Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substances Act and has no approved medical use. Marijuana fits that description, as do heroin and LSD. But unlike far more dangerous drugs, marijuana has medical benefits that are widely known and are now officially recognized in 35 states. The drug czar, though, isn't allowed to recognize them, and whenever any member of Congress tries to change that, the White House office is required to stand up and block the effort. It cannot allow any federal study that might demonstrate the rapidly changing medical consensus on marijuana's benefits and its relative lack of harm compared to alcohol and tobacco. It's a complete catch-22, said Representative Steve Cohen, Democrat of Tennessee, who has introduced legislation to change the requirement. They should be giving Congress and the American people the benefit of the latest research, and yet by statute they're prohibited from doing so. They have no choice but to say they're against it. Joseph Heller should be working there. Governor urging state health department to move on medical marijuana program. Governor Andrew Cuomo's office will direct the State Department of Health to speed up the implementation of the state's medical marijuana program for children who have epilepsy, an administration official on Wednesday morning confirmed. The move comes following the death of a 9-year-old Orchard Park girl whose family lobbied for medical marijuana measure this year, died from seizures earlier this month. In the days since, Cuomo's staff reportedly met with the state health commissioner and advocates for medical marijuana, who requested the program be implemented on a faster timetable. The medical marijuana law was approved in June, following an intense period of negotiations between the governor and the lawmakers who backed the legislation. In the end, the program that was approved was one that gave broad authority over medical marijuana program and that would be implemented over the next 18 months. Grand Old Party congressman pushes for federal legalization of marijuana oil. The movement to legalize marijuana oil for the treatment of seizures just got a big push. Representative Scott Perry has introduced a bill to nationally legalize CBD oil or marijuana extract to treat seizures in children. Earlier this year, I was approached by 3 local families whose children suffer from severe epilepsy, said Representative Perry. Their heartbreaking situations compelled me to act in the federal level to enable their access to a supplement that literally has changed lives, not only in the form of relief for the individual who suffers from this condition, but subsequently for their families and loved ones as well. The move comes in conjunction with a Pennsylvania Governor Tom Corbett's promise to create a pilot program on the state level for families in need of marijuana oil for their children. But many Pennsylvania families have complained that the governor's bill has been slow-moving and that time is not on the side of many of these children. Rand Paul files crack sentencing reform bill. Senator Rand Paul last Thursday filed Senate Bill 2657, the Reset, Reclassification to Ensure Smarter and Equal Treatment Act, to eliminate the sentencing disparity between crack and powder cocaine. The potential 2016 GOP presidential contender unveiled the bill publicly the following day as he pitched his criminal justice reforms before an African-American audience at the National Urban League. The bill would also reclassify some low-level federal drug possession offenses from felonies to misdemeanors, and it seeks to address the issue of drug weights in food items by clarifying that only the weight of the drug itself, not the weight of the food containing it, can be used in charging decisions, thus resulting in lesser charges for defendants. As of early Tuesday morning, the text of the bill is not yet up on the congressional website, but it can be viewed here. And there would be a link there. The 2010 Fair Sentencing Act reduced the crack powder cocaine sentencing disparity from 101 to 18-1. And it's 2:20. I'm just going to pause for a couple of minutes and smoke some weed. So happy 420 to the people in the Central and Mountain Time Zone, and happy 220 to everybody else. Hope you're smoking some good stuff. Hello everybody in chat. It's good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, I don't know what this stuff is, sadly, and I don't have a butt of it to show you, but it's pretty good. I do have a little tiny itsy bitsy butt I can show you, maybe. Okay. So, happy 220. Hope you all got something to smoke. See, the 2010 Fair Sentencing Act reduced the crack powder cocaine sentencing disparity from 100-1 to 18-1. But this bill would totally equalize the penalties by removing the sentencing enforcements for crack. It's been a busy month for Paul when it comes to criminal justice matters. In addition to the Reset Act, he has also introduced an asset forfeiture reform bill and a medical marijuana amendment explicitly allowing states to set their own laws. He also co-sponsored, along with Senator Cory Booker, another sentencing reform bill. Why are law enforcement officials making more marijuana arrests than ever? This uptick in arrests comes even though pot remains widely used, available, and perceived as safe by most Americans. Law enforcement in many states are making a greater number of marijuana arrests than ever. before, despite polling data showing that the majority of Americans believe that the adult use of the plant ought to be legal. According to a just published report, Marijuana in the States 2012 Analysis and Detailed Data on Marijuana Use and Arrests, which appears on the newly launched regulatingcannabis.com website, police made an estimated 750,000 arrests for marijuana violations in 2012, a 110% increase in annual arrests since 1991. Yet despite this doubling in annual marijuana arrests over the past 2 decades, there has not been any significant reduction in marijuana consumption in the United States, the report found. In 2012, marijuana arrests accounted for almost half of all drug arrests nationwide. Marijuana arrests accounted for 2/3 or more of all drug arrests in 5 states: Nebraska, New Hampshire, Montana, Wyoming, and Wisconsin. From 2008 to 2012, 17 state-level jurisdictions experienced an average annual increase in marijuana arrests, the report found. South Carolina, the District of Columbia, experienced the highest overall percentage increase in arrests during this time period. By contrast, annual marijuana arrests fell nationwide by average of 3.3% from 2008 to 2012. Overall, the study reported that the 5 state-level jurisdictions possessing the highest arrest rates for marijuana offenses are the District of Columbia, New York, Louisiana, Illinois, and Nebraska. District of Columbia's lawmakers decriminalized the adult possession of marijuana earlier this month. Bill O'Reilly pretends the blatant racial injustice of the drug war doesn't exist. His language reflects a long history of demonizing marginalized communities. Last Monday, Bill O'Reilly included a segment on marijuana criminalization in his new Fox News show. Well, not new. When I tuned in to watch Stephen Gutwillig, Deputy Executive Director of the Drug Policy Alliance, speak in support of marijuana legalization, I was struck by O'Reilly's vitriolic response to marijuana policy reform. O'Reilly's reaction to the New York Times' recent call for marijuana legalization echoed the all-too-familiar tradition of engaging drug war politics in the larger battleground for racial justice. O'Reilly dismissively remarked, "The left believe American law enforcement targets African Americans for drug prohibition. The racial bias and cost of the drug war is almost certainly not a myth of the left, but a tragic and pressing reality. In New York City, for example, roughly 87% of marijuana arrests are among black and Latino individuals, despite the wealth of evidence that marijuana is used and sold at roughly equal rates across racial lines in our country." In fact, on the same day of O'Reilly's segment, the New York Times published "The Injustice of Marijuana Arrests," reporting that the black people are, on average, 3.7 times more likely than white people to be arrested for marijuana offenses across the U.S. O'Reilly expressed his opinion on legalization by saying it damages the children more than anyone, and poor second, drawing the distinction between the children and the poor, supports an implicit understanding that some children are more worthy of concern and protection than others. O'Reilly even boldly asserted, "The left is basically saying it's blacks. You're trapping the blacks. Because in certain ghetto neighborhoods, it's part of the culture. 9-year-old boys and girls who are smoking it. And they don't like that. They don't want those kids to be targeted by the cops." Yeah, I thought I'd put in a comedy story at the end. So don't forget to watch the other programs. Stay tuned for Jeremiah's show at 4. Tomorrow there will be the Glass Blowing Show with Redbeard. And next week again we'll have class in session with Al the Alchemist and From Under the Influence. Wednesdays at 4. with Marijuana Man. And don't forget to watch Jody's show. It's usually taped on Thursdays and comes up a day or two after that. So, yeah, and there's also lots of Toronto content on their channel, so watch that if you're interested. Thanks again for joining me. I'm Marius Stoner, Associate Editor of Cannabis Culture Magazine. We're looking forward to Mark returning. Don't forget, marijuana is the most advanced plant on the planet, and we're going to use it to save the world and save ourselves. So until next time, take care of yourselves, have a great weekend, and I'll see you then.